Yeah. Cool. We are live, and hopefully Leslie's internet doesn't drop. So, hello everyone. Urza is here. Yay! Thank you for understanding. Originally, this was planned for 11 Eastern, and had to push it back. I'm going to blame my doctors, but we are here to discuss The Girl in the Tower, the second book in the Winternight Trilogy by Catherine Arden. Some people's favorite here, but we will talk about that. But first, before we get into probably chaotic discussion, I'm gonna let everybody introduce themselves because other than Igor and myself, we got a whole new panel of folks. So, directions. Yes, Stephanie, you can start, and we'll.
I'm Stephanie. My channel is Miss Richards Reads, and I read a little bit of everything, but mainly fantasy classics and cozy mysteries. And I'm very excited to be here to talk about this today.
I'm Angela. My channel's Literature Science Alliance. I primarily read adult speculative, and I am the reason Evie picked up The Bear and the Nightingale. That is my claim to fame, and that's really all that needs to be said about me. But I guess my channel exists if you care.
And she's also my gatekeeper for all things sci-fi and fantasy. So
second that. If Angela reads it and loves it, it's automatic on the TBR no matter what. And I've learned
questions it.
Yeah, and it moves up in priority. I learned the hard way of just putting it off and then reading it and loving it and being like, gosh, if I'd have just done this when Angela did, I would have enjoyed it this much longer. But I am Leslie from the Nerdy Narrative. I am the Mikey of BookTube. I read everything. I just enjoy the art of reading, and I love reading different genres and seeing them play into each other. And I really loved this series because I've read a lot of Russian literature over the last year, Russian classics. So it's been fun seeing a fictional take on the world of Russia. And Leanna, I wore my Stitch shirt for you.
I was going to point it out, and I was like, is this the time you were just like, literature in Russia? And I wanted to be like, Stitchy!
Yeah.
Next.
I'm Klaus. My channel is The Contradictorian. I am the villain of BookTube, whatever. This is my first time reading the series, and the first book was my favorite book all year, but as we have only February, that probably doesn't mean a lot. Yeah.
It actually does.
It means
you may not have a favorite for the rest of the year.
But so Klaus's favorite is not Girl in the Tower. So can we kick him off now?
Yeah,
or
wait
Klaus. Later?
Oh no!
Yeah, switched everything around. Whatever.
I guess I'll go now since I'm in Klaus's place. My name is Leanna from Leanna's Library, and I read mainly fantasy. I try to read other things because I feel like that's in some way gooder than to just only read fantasy all the time.
Did you just say gooder?
She said gooder.
Okay.
But left to my own devices, I just read fantasy. So then I try to eat my veggies and read some other stuff sometimes.
Right, so I'm Igor. I'm joining you from Moscow, from the city of the Grand Princes, and I'm the resident Russian of this conversation.
Awesome. Yes, I'm paying Igor to be here, so all relevant questions go to him. But anyways, so since we read The Bear and the Nightingale, general thoughts on how you guys like that, and then compared to going into the second book, did you have any expectations, or going into this one, did you anticipate the same thing as The Bear and the Nightingale? Were you confused by how it started?
The first time I read it, I thought Bear and the Nightingale was a standalone that just sort of had an open-ended ending, and then learned there were more books, and I was like, oh, okay, what? And then saw it was pink and a girl on a horse, and I was like, all right, I don't know what this is going to be. And then I started reading it, and we talked about this last night, that it opens not on Vasya. So I was like, oh, so is then like the first one like a standalone about Vasya, and the next one's gonna be a standalone about Sasha?
Which I would
But it's called
have
Girl in the Tower, so
100%.
like
Yeah.
what?
I love Sasha. He was so underutilized in Bear and the Nightingale,
Yeah.
and so I was stoked when we opened
I
up
was
with
too,
him.
because when I thought Bear and the Nightingale was a standalone, I was like, oh, Sasha's such a great character, and then he just like disappears, and I was like,
Yeah.
so we'll never ever see him again because there's one book and he wasn't in it again.
I should have prefaced this. If you're here and you haven't read The Bear and the Nightingale or The Girl in the Tower, just get out of here. Just get.
Yeah.
'Cause we're basically going to start with spoilers up to this point. So,
But read the series.
yes.
Seriously, read the series.
I don't think I had expectations going into Girl in the Tower. I'm trying to remember because, like, I think I just read Bear and the Nightingale and I saw it had a sequel, but the third book wasn't out yet. And I think on my first read, I gave Bear in the Tower, like, not Bear in the Tower, Bear in the Nightingale, 4 stars. And I was like, I liked it well enough. It's still winter. And this was just back when I read series back to back because I didn't know, I wasn't on the bookish internet. No one was watching me. And so I just did that. And I was really shocked at the difference in narrative structure and pace. But it was like for my benefit because I read it like 4 years ago and I was a different fantasy reader back then. So having a more plot driven it was more tropey too. Like it was more familiar to me. I really enjoyed it. So I didn't have expectations, but I was surprised, I think.
I was expecting some travel, as she has a horse now, and I also thought that Sasha was underutilized, especially as he is a historical character, and we learn about him in our school textbooks in, like, I don't know, 5th grade. And so I was thinking that there should be something about him. There must have been something about him. So yes, that's what I was expecting, but the pacing was even faster than I had expected, actually.
Agreed. I had a little trouble getting started in The Bear and the Nightingale, and I didn't think I was going to like it at first, but then chapter 5, and all of a sudden everything hit, and I loved it. Girl in the Tower, I couldn't get enough of. There were, I want to say, 3 chapters I enjoyed so much, the atmosphere, the way that Catherine Arden just wrote and worded what happened. And they were such impactful events that I couldn't move forward until I reread that chapter and just really absorbed what was happening, just the scope of the importance of the little events. I loved this book. I would just reread it by itself and not the rest of the series if I had to.
Yeah, I expected it to be about the same, but I read The Bear and the Nightingale maybe a year-ish ago. But I wasn't disappointed that it was different. I really, really enjoyed it. And even though I started it yesterday, it was enjoyable.
Less than an hour ago, right?
Yeah. It was enjoyable to binge because I just really enjoyed everything. And
Well, I think it is more of a page turner than Bear and the Nightingale.
Definitely.
What about you, Klaus?
Yeah. So my expectations before reading this were skyrocketing because, as I've told you, I really loved the first one. I gave that 5 stars. And
that just feels so good to hear.
And I was trying to keep it in because before reading the first book, everybody kept telling me how good this was. And I also knew that the author was a fan of my favorite author of all time, Dorothy Dunnett. And she's written like a 5-star review for all of her books on Goodreads. So I was like, okay, I have to love this book. There's no way I'm not loving this book. And I was so relieved when I actually ended up liking it. And then going into the second one, I expected it to be sort of what it is because we know Vasya had to leave home. That's the ending of the first book. And I knew that Sasha was going to be in it again because there was no reason why she would even introduce that character just to throw him away in the middle of the first book. So that was kind of obvious. I actually liked the way they started because I think a lot of people have issues with that because we don't see Vasya at the start. But in the first book, you don't see Vasya at the start too because she's not born yet. And so I really like that sort of build up, preparing everything until Vasya comes and enters the book. I really like that plot device. It is a really long section without Vasya. And the, in a way, problematic thing for me is that once that happens, because we spend so much time with Sasha at the first part of the book, and later on there isn't a lot of Sasha. There are chapters from his POV, but still it feels like it's a little bit disjointed at that point. But I still really like the book. I have two major issues with it, but those are more like personal preferences because I preferred that secluded village setting with that atmosphere. I like the city and town thing as well. I like how she depicts all of this thing. The writing is as brilliant as in the first book, but I just think that Vasya is too reckless in this book for me. She isn't a reckless person, but some of her actions are just too much. I'm doing my thing, and I'm not caring about what the other people around me are doing. She keeps telling us like, oh no, I don't want to hurt them, but she's still hurting them. And that is my biggest issue because that is the one character trope that I am not able to forgive in any freaking fictional character. So it's still a great book, but I have my tiny issues with it.
I totally get that critique, but before we actually get into the text, Igor, I know you wanted to talk about the epigraph, the Pushkin.
Yes. It is a very famous. It is a very famous poem. I'm just bringing it up on my screen because, shamefully, I don't remember the second stanza by heart. But it's a famous poem that also we all learn at school, and it's as famous as the one in the first book. So I can recite the first 8 lines that are quoted in the epigraph, and then I'll give a little bit of context because it ties in nicely to what we have in the trilogy as a whole, actually to the first book even more. So that's how it sounds in the original. Буря мглою небо кроет, вихри снежные крутя, то как зверь она завоет, то заплачет, как дитя, то по кровле обветшалой вдруг соломой зашумит, то как путник запоздалый к нам в окошко застучит. This is a very nice description of this winter storm, and it's a very short poem actually, and it is written as a description as words addressed to the poet's old nurse, wet nurse, as we could call her, nanny. Yeah, so his nanny, who is his servant, and she is a real person. So he was writing it to his actual nanny when he was already an adult man, and she was a very old woman. And I think that it is her character, this historical lady from the 19th century, that influenced the character of Dunya in the book, right? This storyteller, old
How
woman.
is the translation of it that we have in the book? Is it, do you feel like accurately?
Yes, it's good and accurate. It's not rhyming and metered, unlike Russian classical poetry, but rhyme and meter don't work so well in English nowadays. Yeah, it has kind of gone away from it. In Russian, it sounds much more natural. So yes, the translations are good in both cases, in book 1 and book 2. I've looked at book 3. It's also got an epigraph from Pushkin, but a lesser known poem actually. A good one, but a lesser known. So this particular poem gives us this nice context in that it is addressed to the storyteller character.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm now on the search for a lot of Pushkin stuff because I'm so intrigued now. But yeah,
Codex Cantina can help you out with him.
Okay, cool. I will hit him up. Yeah, so I mean, we already kind of talked about how this starts off from Sasha's perspective.
Well, it starts off with Olga, and then we get to Sasha.
Olga, and then Sasha. So actually, let's talk about Olga for a second. Like, did you we don't really see a lot of her in the first book. So I especially on reread, I found myself being drawn more to her, not just because it starts off with her perspective, but it's just what she goes through and stuff like that. Do you guys have any thoughts on Olga, whether you liked her perspective?
Didn't like her.
Really?
Yeah. I just
No reason.
when we meet her in the first book, I did. They were very, she and Vasya were very close. Now we meet her and that has changed, and I'm just like, where did your patience go? And it could be because she was unhappy in a sense. I can't see how she would enjoy her arrangement as to how her marriage was. But some of that was her. Some of that was her choice to do what she did, how she chose to stay in with her daughter. And it's like, you grew up with Vasya. You knew how she was as a child. She hasn't changed. You have no patience with her. And it's just, I just don't like when family just doesn't treat each other a little better
Are you
than
older or a little or a middle child?
So that's really a very difficult question to answer.
Because as an older sister, I understand Ola's frustration with Vasya when you can still love someone for their differences and know they're different, but also there are rules of society that are hard to move and you just want to protect someone. And when they make it so hard to protect and help them, and then also you're the head of a household with a rambunctious child, like I felt like she was harsh at times, but it all made complete sense.
Also, I feel like the patience she had with Vasya when they were children, Vasya was a child, and she could think of her as a rambunctious child, and she's a phase, and she'll grow out of it, and she'll, come to accept society as it is. And that Vasya is still exactly the way she was when she was a kid. And Olga's like, look, you just can't act like this anymore. And the fact that, it doesn't just hurt you, it hurts me now. Like your actions, it's not just that I think you're ruining your life, you are hurting my life and my security and my family. And I cannot be patient with this because it's doing harm.
But she could have sent for Olya. I mean, Olya could have sent for Vasya like she had said. Like nobody taught Vasya any of this. Vasya was left with a stepmother who didn't like her. And Dunya died. Who was there to, from a female perspective, teach Vasya anything?
Okay, I don't think that Vasya would have listened to anybody that would have taught her.
Probably not. Probably not.
Sometimes you have to learn the hard way.
Because I think like the girl in the tower, the young girl, kind of represents what would have happened if Vasya was forced into a tower where it could sort of work, but it was never a good fit and trouble and mayhem would have always happened. I don't know. I mean, I understand not liking Ola's decisions. I just think they all make complete sense. And if she was too nice, I wouldn't have felt as grounded. Like, I think she's a more real character to me because of how she is.
She just seemed really judgmental against how Vasya was. Vasya had no control over it, just like Mariah didn't. And then, she didn't treat her own child that way.
I agree that she was judgmental. I just don't dislike that about her. I just think that makes sense.
I think she totally deserves to be judgmental because Vasya isn't just endangering herself, and she's not just endangering Olya this time, but also Olya's family, because she's a mother now, she has to protect her kids, and Vasya is endangering that by being stupid, by raising attention all the time. She could go for that entire vibe of, okay, I'm a girl, but I pretend to be a boy.
We already know Klaus hates Vasya, so this is invalid.
I don't hate Vasya, but she's doing stupid stuff. Why doesn't she just cut off her hair? That's so dumb.
She didn't do stupid stuff on purpose.
I agree. She should have cut her hair.
She's a free spirit. She's
wild. I'm a free spirit too, but I don't provoke the leader of the freaking Tatars who are.
You're provoking me right now.
You started it.
Listen, I want to say my defense of Ola does not mean I dislike Vasya. I love Vasya. I'm not Klaus.
I don't dislike Vasya. I love Vasya. Vasya is one of my top 10 female characters I've ever read. But she is too reckless in this book, and Olya is sort of so different from her. And yeah.
I was going to say, Klaus, I'm almost regretting adding you to this chat. So but it's okay. It's fine.
It's fine.
You were expecting this. Don't tell me you didn't expect this.
Sorry, Igor, what?
I think that the way Olya's character changes is not deserved, but it's logical. It comes from the situation in which she is, and it follows logically from what we have in the book. In that sense, she's very well written, and I agree that she's perhaps sometimes too judgmental, but that's the way she has grown to be. That's how her life has shaped her, and she's not the character to question everything like Vasya.
Well, it's also, I mean, there's a lot of risk, so it's better safe than sorry. So maybe it can work out, but why take that risk when your family's at stake?
Also,
She
she
has
doesn't
also-
have the dramatic irony that we do, that we know there's magic afoot and bigger games, right? Like, Ola's just like, this is just day-to-day life, and why are you... Like, she doesn't know about Vasya's destiny and all of the other stuff. She's just trying to live.
Vivara could have told her.
And she was predisposed to think badly when she was like pre-prepped by Constantine, who told her that Vasya had done whatever. So like, even if like Olga loves Vasya, so she's gonna be like, I want to hear Vasya's side, but like she's already, like you've like influenced the jury. She's already heard the negative version of this.
Yeah, and she's also been at Moscow for like years now, while Vasya has been in the countryside. And society doesn't expect that much of you if you are back there in some secluded village. That's just not the same thing. So that's also something that Vasya comes in there from the wilderness, and she's just like wild beast. She's completely untamed, just doing her stuff, doesn't care about everybody else, and that's
She's
fine.
feral.
Yeah, she's feral in a way. So yeah.
On that note, because my dog is about to flip out, so I'm probably gonna have to step away. It's a good segue. Let's talk about Constantine and Olya and how she's between Vasya and Constantine. And I'm just gonna step away for just 1 second.
Constantine is a deeply misunderstood person.
In what way?
No, he's just the worst. He is completely the
he's
worst.
just really, really
incredible.
emasculated and really upset about it all the time. Like, that's who he is.
He is a little, I hate that character so much because
you don't have to say because, just
multiple times, and he just is an ungrateful. No swearing on Evie's channel.
He wants to manipulate others, but he himself is so easily manipulated, and we see it kind of explicitly stated by Cassian, who says, "Well, you're just a puppet. You're easy to manipulate."
Oh,
and also, I mean, so like
started on Cassian
in Bear the Nightingale, it's still, you can see what a hypocrite he is and how despicable he is, but you can kind of follow the mental gymnastics that he does to justify what he's doing. But in Girl in the Tower, the deal he makes, sir, there is no justifying that. There is no way you can make that like, well, actually, no, you're evil. You know this is wrong. There is no possible way you can justify this.
Stephanie, how did it feel seeing him come back? Did you expect that after reading Bear and the Nightingale?
I did not.
It's like, why aren't you dead?
Yes. So I made it more entertaining, but I hate him so much.
Yeah.
I mean, every time Vasya doesn't kill him, I'm like, just kill him.
Just let him go.
Yeah, Melly said, because when he came back, I was like, well, maybe he'll do something. Maybe, since he's coming back. And no. Not
I
at all.
never expected any sort of redemption arc for Constantine because
I was hoping, since he was coming back.
I just think back to
I
the
did
first
not
book
want
when
that
she
for
saves
him.
his life, and I'm like, but what if you hadn't? What would the series have been? I'm not saying kill him, but what if you hadn't?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked how he was portrayed. Like it is kind of the same thing,
Well, he's
but
very well written. I think none of
Yes.
us is saying he's not well written.
Yeah. And he still has that struggle of like power, or wanting power, but he's completely lost it. So I think Matt has a great point that he's portrayed more as a pawn than a villain, because he's just trying to get power back in any way he can, I think.
I still love that Leanna's put it in my head that he always has like the Notre Dame like Disney movie song in his head whenever he thinks of Vasya. I'm like, yes, that is
Hellfire. Yeah. Vasya's his Esmeralda.
I
You'll
haven't
be
seen that
mine
movie
or
yet.
you will burn is like literally his mantra.
He really is like, if I can't have you, no one can. Like,
It's true. But Urza had this message early, but can we all agree that having a horse race at Winter in Moscow twice was a stupid long distance?
I guess most
Speaking of traveling.
The Kremlin, which is not extremely large. I mean, it's a large distance, but it's not like 50 kilometers.
Yeah.
also, I assume Moscow's like a different size in 14th century.
That's what I
Versus
meant. Yes,
now,
it was
yeah.
basically the Kremlin,
It was bigger back then,
walls, and then a little spillage around it.
Well, he kind of Constantine I guess in a way kind of machinates that entire thing, or a little bit, I guess. I think, oh crap, what's his name?
Cassian.
Cassian and Chalubi?
Chalbe.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think they were.
another jerk.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think it was
yeah.
interesting how like you have this kind of trifecta of antagonists there, which could have been too much, but I think is balanced really well. And how they're introduced is really interesting.
Yes, there are kind of two different stooges for the main villain. One is visible, the other one is largely invisible, at least not public.
One thing I was curious about was
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that one we can't really say much. That's a spoilery
yeah.
fun thing coming.
Yeah.
So there is something about it. Thanks. About the what's his name? The Tatar, the third villain.
Oh man, I called them taters.
Yeah, he sort of gets lost at the ending. He's in the battle, and we see them fighting, and I don't see we get a resolution of what happens to him. If he's killed, if he gets away, I think he somehow is just lost.
Yeah.
He features in historical sources. He will be back, definitely.
Maybe not in this history.
Oh, I was curious since you did say that Sasha's brought up a lot in your text, and I know that Catherine Arden mentions that Sasha is inspired. What is how close to what you're taught is this? Like how many liberties did she take? I guess.
Basically, she took the unseen parts of his life as of yet. We don't see him entering the historical events that he's known for. They are all coming in the third book. At least that's what I can glean from the chapter names.
Okay, cool.
Chalube was the bandit.
Yes,
leader.
Chalube was the bandit leader, and he's also a name from the historical sources.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, that was totally obvious. Like, did anyone not suspect that Cassian is a villain?
Hated him instantly.
Definitely a villain, and his name actually bears a lot of symbolism, if I may make a small digression. It's a very nicely invented name, Cassian Lutovich, because the name Cassian, or Cassian, like, there is a Cassian in Star Wars, so it's an international name, but with a Russian spelling. Cassian, Saint Cassian's Day, is February the 29th, the day that only comes in leap years, the vanishing day, the phantom day. So Saint Cassian and the name Cassian was very early associated with treachery, trickstery, deception, and so on. It's a very clear symbol in Russian folklore. And the Lutovich, son of Lut, it's his patronymic, which means son of Lut or Luti. Luti is the Old Slavic name for February. So he's February the 29th, son of February. Literally.
Interesting.
This all screams deception and strange forces.
But so even if you can pick up with the way he's named that there's something, something about deception, did you know who he would be immediately?
No, I was able to guess that maybe he would be something related to Cachet because of the similarity of the names, like when I was 2/3 into the book.
Hi, Joanna.
I was gonna say I kept expecting it to be something to do with that, if not him, then somewhere, because of Maria's name being the daughter. So I thought that might get woven in.
So he has his own horse, which I thought was, that whole arc was very interesting to me. And
Another bird horse.
yes, yes. And and we don't get it until, I think, well, do we get it in the third book? I can't remember. But I thought it was interesting how like he wanted power over Vasya before it's even revealed that she is a girl. So he knew that she was a girl, and I don't think it outright says it, but I think potentially there's like, I don't know, he had some sort of supernatural like knowledge into her because of his horse and her horse, and knowing that, I don't know, but I think he had some supernatural like.
Well, I think maybe he didn't realize that's what it was. He was just attracted to her for a reason without knowing gender or what she could do. I think that he just, something about him sensed part of that ability in her, and that's what drew him to her.
Oh, but thinking back to the name, you talked about his name, but also the name of his land is indicative of who he is.
Throne Tower.
Yeah.
It's not something taken from folklore. It's just.
But I think there's other characters that also notice that that's the name of his land and are like, that's sus.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't remember because it's been a year since I've read it, but when did Vasya start to feel, or did she ever feel distrust towards this man?
I think it was very closely upon meeting him. He was just, the way he would just kind of show up and act towards her made her uncomfortable.
And how he looks at her with some kind of an understanding in his eyes. I think that's what.
Yeah, I think it was initially in the village, right? When she initially meets him, but doesn't know who he is. At least, I mean, I also suspected, like, I was
trying to figure out what was my distrust versus the characters, because, you know,
Right.
sometimes, you know, you yell at characters to, like, get stuff together, and even though has this distrust, she still is, like Klaus said, very reckless, but I think it makes sense because she, by putting on those boys' clothes, found freedom she'd been denied her whole life, and you know how people just get mad with freedom when they suddenly have, like when some students, you know, go to college for the first time and had never had any like freedom at their home, they like, you know, eat too much, party too much, go too wild, even though that's not their base temperament. I feel like that's what we saw with Vasya when she realized these clothes are magic. I'm suddenly treated in such a different way, and she really pushed the limits, like being distrustful towards that man. Why did you do a race? Like, what is this pride and hubris you have on your shoulders? Like, I was so stressed for that scene even before on reread, even reading that scene, I'm like, this is so bad. I'm so stressed.
I feel like I hate watching movies that have like gambling in them, because I'm always so, I mean, I don't like gambling for that reason in real life. And like when I'm watching a character, like Casino Royale is a great movie. I like it. But the parts of it, the violent scenes, sure, watch it casually, eat my dinner. The scenes when he's playing poker, I'm like, I'm so stressed. Whereas, so like same thing with her, like anytime, like, so when the first time that she does where she's like, I can, you know, if I ride this mare, then I get to keep it. Or like, if I can tame it, then I get to keep it. And I was just like, I think you can do it, but why are you doing this? Please stop. And then she does the race and I'm like, please stop.
Well, I think as a horse girl myself, I think that's really the only connection that she has is with the unnatural world, and more specifically horses in a more human world. So I think maybe that's why, and she sees this horse and how the Tatars are treating their horses, and that's not what she does. And even when she is taming the horse, like I really liked the description of that, how she's using more natural body movements to gain trust of this horse, as opposed to literally or figuratively breaking it by beating it, which is normal, horse taming practices.
Well, and then Solveig carries a little bit of that, because he 100% was like, I there's nobody faster than me.
Yeah. And
Solveig is a crutch for Vasya, and whatever he's feeling, especially if it's seconding what she's feeling, that bolstered her confidence, and she thought it was a sure win. Like, my dad always told me, don't bet unless it's a sure win. And I think that's kind of her attitude with it.
Well,
and I don't think that she, like, while she did not trust Cassian, I don't believe she ever thought anything terrible would happen in the event it didn't go the way that she wanted it to.
Yeah, I think
she didn't know that he would unmask her. No one knew that he would do that.
Yeah,
and she hadn't seen the horse before, so
he actually proposed the competition, the race, at the moment when she was about to unmask herself, if I remember it right. Mm-hmm. She was about to tell the prince about her deception. He offers this, presumably kind of saving her from this wrong step.
Mm-hmm. And then he goes back
to
it anyways. Yeah. But I to kind of piggyback off of what you were saying, Leslie, it's interesting how Vasya uses Solveig as a crutch, but they're both young. They're both not necessarily, well, I guess naive in a way, but they're also both reckless.
It's kind of reckless.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Just in the beginning, when they're first setting out, and Solveig doesn't want to carry the gear on his back, and he's like, fine, okay, I guess. Like, he's more immature than Vasya, so the two of them together is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Yes, he is in a way also intoxicated by freedom, because he used to exist like kind of a bird spirit linked to this place, to the supernatural place, and now he sees the whole world.
Yeah, but he kind of wanted to stay in the forest. He wanted to look out from the trees.
Yeah.
I do love how they have, like, I feel like a lot of times, because, I mean, he is young, I think, for his species, but also still older than Vasya, but, like, he wasn't the wise mentor. They were just pals. They just wanted to do stuff, and, like, it's just that friendship where, like, you don't have that third friend who, like, tells you, hey, guys, do we actually think this is a good call? They just...
You don't have the reasonable one.
Yeah. No, there was no reason.
Only Merry and Pippin, and there's no Frodo or Sam around to be like, guys.
Exactly.
So, do we want to talk about Maria, since we talked about Olga?
That was a surprise.
She
was a surprise.
I could see Vasya, like, in her, because not only that they both have these abilities and stuff like that, but the potential there. But there's also, like, opposites there, where Maria obviously has a maternal figure who actually cares about her. I think she probably recognized her powers even before we meet them.
I also thought Maria was an interesting counterpoint to Vasya's little half-sister in Bear and the Nightingale, because she kind of replaces her in, like, that person to Vasya, this, like, little girl that she has affection for.
Right.
Well, and I think the way that Maria was brought up by Olga is I feel that while she was similar to Vasya, I feel that she had more control over how she reacted to it.
Yeah.
She is basically who Vasya could have been if she had a strong.
If Olga had sent for her like she promised.
I mean, I think, don't they bring that up?
Do we think that Vasya? But do we think Vasya would have been better off if she had gone to Moscow when she was a little girl? I don't think so.
No.
No.
I think if Constantine had never come to her village, Vasya would have lived a very uneventful, fine life.
Yeah.
Like, she would have been she would have been like the weird old maid in her village who, like, could heal things and, like, talk to the spirits or whatever. Like, she wouldn't have been truly accepted, but she would have lived a reasonable life. If
she would have
wanted to read that book.
She would have fulfilled the function that Morozko imbued in her to be his crutch in a way, to be his
Yeah.
support.
And I think Olga knew that. I think Olga thought, not knowing what's happening in her village in Baron the Nightingale, that was a better place and not as claustrophobic for her wild sister.
Vasya is like Morozko's like retirement fund, but then suddenly the company invested in Bitcoin and it is running amok. And he's like, no, you're supposed to be steady. You're supposed to be my rock. What is this?
I think Maria is a good middle point between Vasya and Anna in the first book. Like Anna she's kind of sequestered in this like religious, I don't know, what is it, the nunnery or something like that she was in, and how that affected her and her abilities and stuff like that, and how she viewed them, whereas Vasya is free out in this in the countryside essentially, but Maria has kind of both in a way. She's not negatively impacted by the seclusion, but she's also not completely free to kind of what's the word I'm thinking of, to really build and kind of let those powers, not powers.
To embrace them.
Yeah, embrace them. There you go. That's the word I'm looking for.
And isn't part of that also, though, that the spirits just aren't as strong where she is either? I think that has to have a bearing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the spirits were very corporeal for Vasya, and they're much
also,
more...
Vasya had Dunya, where
Yeah.
Marian didn't.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But they do get stronger with as Vasya.
Well, Vasya just bleeds on them all, so...
Yeah. Douchebag priest. I think Sasha says that if Olga had sent her, she would not be any different than no one. Yeah,
Mhm.
I agree. But
Maria grew up in this environment, while Vasya, if Olga sent for her, Vasya would have arrived already with some kind of pre-programming from this freer life.
yeah.
Well, and, like, she doesn't have, like, the interaction with, like, male figures like Vasya did. Like, Vasya's brothers really, like, doted on her. And, you know,
Mhm.
I think when you have
Even
interactions
Vasya's
between...
father.
Yeah, whereas in the tower, it's literally just, like, women. Which isn't, like, bad, but, like, you really don't even see what are you missing. You don't even know.
Mhm.
Well, even Olga talks about how her husband is always gone, and she even feels that kind of absence in a way.
We don't even see that husband ever so far. He isn't even in the book, so yeah.
Yeah.
That's how secluded they are in that tower over there.
He's there by implication, because Olga's pregnant.
Yeah.
Well, he was 8 months prior,
Well,
at least.
So
Yeah.
that's I think a good segue. The whole scene with Olga, you know, she starts her delivery, and in the midst of this
Well, I mean, anytime you have a
fire.
pregnant character, it's a ticking time bomb, and you know they're gonna go into labor at the most horrible, inopportune moment. Like, you just, as soon as I was like, okay, so there's gonna be a dramatic labor scene.
Yeah. Well, Vasya, like, I guess it's an extension of her recklessness, and I guess kind of not necessarily pride, but her selfishness in a way, that she wants to keep Olga as opposed to letting her child
Not even
live.
that she wants to keep Olga, it's that she doesn't want to allow Olga to make her own choice.
Right,
Mhm.
exactly. So,
Which is really striking, since the whole world is always trying to take away Vasya's choices. Like, you know, you can really see how being in the patriarchal hierarchy has really, like, shifted her sense of power and control slightly, where she, you know...
But it's funny because, like, Olga would be the one that's frustrating people like Leslie, but Olga, from her perspective, is like, I'm doing this for your own good, Vasya. You hate me for it, but I'm doing this for your own good. And Vasya turns around and is like, for your own good, I'm choosing you over your child. And so both of them hate each other for trying to do things for your own good.
Straight up selfishness. Vasya did not want to lose her sister. She was done with loss at this point.
Yeah. I think that scene was quite striking. But the fire surrounding it, any thoughts on that, and then by extension, Maria being kidnapped by Constantine. Yeah,
Constantine, yeah.
yeah, freaking Constantine.
That guy.
It's not Vasia's place to choose. Yeah.
But am I sad she saved Olga? No. I'm like, it was wrong, but I'm fine with it.
I don't know if it's selfishness or no. That's a good way to. Yeah. That's a good way. But the whole fire and Cassian and Constantine, like it, I feel like it's structured similarly to The Bear and the Nightingale, where yes, there's a lot more action in the first, like, I don't know, 2/3 of it, but it's still somehow ramped up with the action and everything going on with the fire and with Olga's, labor and delivery and stuff like that. Oh, yes. Constantine kidnapping Maria as a kind of, do you think it was kind of like a distraction for Cassian to get to Dimitri?
I thought it was because Cassian just wanted someone from that bloodline, and that one's easier to take than Vasya, because Vasya's would be like getting his special fire horse. Like, it's possible, but it's a lot of work.
True. Yeah.
Because if there was a supernatural thing, it was that he knew who their ancestor was, because they had a relationship, and knew that ancestor had this power that I can't remember why he coveted, but he wanted this power around him.
Power. Period.
Huh? Yeah.
Just wants it.
I couldn't remember if it had to do with his immortality. Like, I didn't know if it was part of the key to keeping himself both immortal and young.
Well, I mean, what he does with the jewel is basically the same thing that Morozko does with Vasya, where this is a way to, like, an anchor.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I knew there was, like, a specific purpose in addition to, cool, I have this shiny, powerful thing that is under my control.
Hot take, Urza. Hot take. We do meet the ancestor Tamara, which is, I think, a really interesting kind of structure that Arden gives to the story. You meet like this ghost toward the beginning, and it turns out to be Tamara, who is the grandmother, and it kind of like all comes around in a way. So I thought that was interesting.
You have 3 generations.
Yeah. So do you think the girl in the tower is Tamara, or is it Maria, or is it
Or is it all of them?
Is it all of them? Yeah.
I mean, I think it's definitely meant to be like, haha, I use this title, it means many things, kind of like the mad ship for Robin Hobb. Like, I don't think it means one person.
Yeah.
I don't know that reference, but okay.
It's okay. 2
I'm not
people
allowed
here
to talk
did.
about that series.
You can
All right.
talk. I just might not listen. I might mute the computer.
All right, just because we're coming up on almost an hour, any random thoughts that we haven't talked about?
Well, I just felt like, I mean, this is my favorite one, and I did like the whole trilogy, and no spoilers for the 3rd one, but I complained just generally about the pacing of the 3rd one by itself, but I also felt like Girl in the Tower just gave us so much of like the answers to questions. Like, we meet Tamara, and that is such a thing set up in the 1st one, and we finally see Sasha and Olga, who disappeared in the 1st one, and we see Vasya kind of level up, and we just see so much to just kind of like get resolved and answered and amped in Girl in the Tower that I was like, okay, so why is there another book? Like, I just feel like Girl in the Tower just like, it gave me all of the things, and there's just like this whole other book. I was like, why?
Well, that's actually kind of how I felt about after reading The Bear and the Nightingale. I'm like, this is
I thought Bear and the Nightingale was a standalone.
Yeah. I feel like Arden does a really good job of having contained arcs within each of the books, up until that point.
But even, I mean, Girl in the Tower is building off of Bear and the Nightingale, and so then
Exactly.
the things that were left hanging in Bear and the Nightingale, I thought were answered, and so I didn't feel like there was enough left hanging in Girl in the Tower for me to be like, okay, like this is a satisfying conclusion, but there's stuff still that there wasn't anything really that I still wanted. I was like, okay, I'm good. I'm done now.
I think the reason why this book I loved a lot on the first time, but not as much on the others, is like I think there is still a huge thread here where we have still this battle of balance that we haven't talked about between old religion and new religion and the blending of that and what's happening with the spirit world versus our physical plane. And like that is touched in this book, but this book is very much a people and politics book.
I guess
like,
for me, like
much,
I dreaded seeing that answer just because I know, like, historically speaking, that gets edged out and like that's going to go away because that's just what happens. So I was like, there's just what am I going to read a whole book about watching that happen? That's sad. Like, I was like, if you're going to make it win, that's going to be stupid and unbelievable. So
I've still been thinking about that whole scene with Vasya, Olga, the child, and Morozko. And now that I have finished the third one, I think that was a very important scene. I think that was a plot device that has everything to do with how the trilogy ends. But I was glancing down at my notes, and I got tickled because I wrote down Vasya wagers Chernobyl instead of Chelabay.
Oh, I had a thought about Olga while we were talking. Something that I think makes me like how she's characterized even more, even though she is harsh and maybe not like, if my sister did that to me, I would be upset sort of thing, is that otherwise, if we don't have Olga being that force, it's literally just all the men in the world against Vasya. We don't have this realistic, it's not just the men, it's the whole system and everyone in the system who either benefits or is controlled by the system, which does unfortunately include her family, like Olga and Sasha.
Also, every man in it isn't like Constantine or that guy that was like engaged to her briefly in Bear the Nightingale, because there's also people like Sasha, and briefly you're like, hope maybe Cassian, but like there's other people around her. It's never just like, oh, there's these horrible, narrow-minded people, and they're the baddies. It's not that easy. Vasya's reckless, and you're like, that's not necessarily a good idea. Maybe you should kind of listen to Sasha and Olga, although Sasha and Olga also don't have the whole picture and are giving you sometimes bad advice. And like, even what Morozko tells her to do is sometimes like, you should listen to him, and sometimes you're like, maybe don't listen to him. And like, it's just all very messy. Yeah. It's not a clear, like, well, they're in right, and they're wrong, and... you know,
well, and like we say, you know, Vasya's vain and reckless and full of pride and vanity. Like, vanity is why she gets caught. She should have cut her hair. There's no mystical reason why she needs to keep her hair. She's not entangled. Like, she could have cut her hair off. Like,
sorry. Although there are other parts of her that she can't cut off so easily that would still expose her for who she is.
That's true. That's true. But she was at least, I think it was implied, young enough and not as well endowed enough because of winter and lack of fat stores that she could hide.
But once he strips her naked, it's pretty clear. Hair or no hair.
Yeah. It's just harder to strip someone naked at the end of a horse race than to pull a hood.
On that note, I know we kind of talked about like any anticipations or expectations for the third book for the people that haven't read the third book yet.
Well, big historical events. I mean, unlike readers from other countries, as soon as I see Prince Dmitry and Alexander Peresviet and other names, I know what it all shall come to. And the interesting thing is that there are several accounts of these events, like contemporary accounts, medieval accounts, and the final fate of characters like Sasha is not written in stone. It's not like we all know, oh, this character died in that or that year. Well, Prince Dmitry, obviously, we know when he died, but not so much about Alexander. So a lot of it is still wide open, but I know at least what historical events all the things are coming to, but everything except that can be turned any which way.
What about you, Klaus?
We haven't even talked about the relationship between Vasya and Morozko in this book.
Thank goodness.
That's the thing I care about the most. So I hope that comes to a satisfying conclusion. But I basically think that the third book ends with Morozko just dying, or whatever the equivalent of dying for Winter God is. I also hope that we can get to see Alyosha again, because I was really not happy about him not being in the book. And yeah,
You'd like him better than Sasha?
I like them the same, I think. But Sasha represents.
Well, I do think it's fun to see Vasya and Alyosha because they're closer in age and they kind of grew up together, and it's more of
just
a
more
friendship
funny
of
than
equals. Where Sasha is
Sasha is a
older
good
and
kid.
was away
Yeah.
and is like the mentor figure.
He's more the mentor figure, he's more reasonable and grown up, and Alyosha and Vasya have a better vibe together, I think. That's more entertaining to read. Yeah. So I want to see that. Obviously, historical events, yeah. But, yeah. Yes, that's the younger brother.
The younger but older brother, right?
Younger than Sasha, but older
Yeah.
than Vasya.
Yeah.
The Van Helsing brother was cool.
I did have like a question specifically for our fellow Russian, because this was asked at my book club, but no one was from Russia there. They were wondering, since Catherine Arden is not, from Russia, she's, I think, from Vermont here in the United States. And I was wondering, has this been treated well, I guess, this source material and everything like that?
Yes, I guess so. I mean,
not to
there
make
are-
you speak for the entire country. I just
Yeah. I mean, in my view, she did her homework very well. I mean, she's got lots of facts there. They are all in their rightful place. She knows the nuances. She knows lots of things and puts them into her story so that they don't feel like info dumps. I mean,
There's no
there are
situations where like she's using a word or a custom or a
Yeah.
food wrong, and you're like, that's actually not what Russians say or do or eat.
There are some small details, like, I don't know, using the word девушка as a form of address, which means just young girl. It wasn't like that historically. It's only now that it can be heard, but otherwise.
So it is actually a thing, though. She didn't entirely make it up. Like, people do say that, just not then.
All words, all Russian words that she uses exist in the Russian language. Some of them might be slightly off.
I think in the author's note for either Bear in the Nightingale or in the Tower, she talked about how one of the words that like should be transliterated differently, but she liked how it looked better the way that she transliterated it, and so she went with that.
Yeah, I saw that.
But otherwise, I think she's also very good at blending together history and fantasy. Like most of her descriptions of cityscapes with tall towers and bell towers and so on. This is not historically accurate because in the 14th century there were no tall towers. But it just feels right for this kind of fairy tale environment.
For the title. Because otherwise the title doesn't make sense.
She
the girl in the reasonably sized house.
Tower, yeah.
The third story.
I have to go. So
Okay, bye, Leanna.
Bye.
On that
I
note,
have to go too, I guess.
we will be back with a discussion of The Winter of the Witch. Igor is definitely joining us because I'm paying him for this. Not really. But we will have a new cast of panel. But thank you so much for joining me on camera, in chat. Everyone's information is linked down below. If you're not already subscribed to them, definitely do so. Yeah, just want to call. Oh, hold on. Yay, there you go. Just want to call that out and make sure that. Yes, that's there. Oh, hey, Fina. There you go. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. We will see you later this month for The Winter of the Witch. Thank you for joining.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.